Anyone got a pencil? Hello and welcome to the Mixtape podcast. My name's Mark and I am your host. Thank you so much for tuning in for this week's episode. Every week on the show, I ask my guests to make up an imaginary mixtape and pick 6 tracks for it. I've had some incredible chats. They're already there in the archives, just waiting for you to stumble across them. I've had chats with Steve Kilby from The Church, Rowetta from The Happy Mondays, Rick from Ash. I've had Al Anderson, one of the original Wailers. I've had Clint Boone from Your Spiral Carpets. I've had Donita Sparks from L7. I've had Scott Kirkland from The Crystal Method. There's lots and lots of episodes sitting there waiting for you to discover. If you enjoy this week's episode, please feel free to rate it 5 stars on Spotify and or jump up to the top of the page and hit that old follow or subscribe button, and you'll be notified every time there is a new episode. Catch up with everything I'm doing by going to www.themixtapepodcast.com. That's enough for the intro. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's Mixtape show. And today on the show, it is not just a pleasure, it's an absolute dream to say hello to Luke Concannon from Nizlopi. How are you, Luke?
Thanks, Mark. Thanks a lot for having me. We've been talking about this for time, haven't we? We've been emailing, and so I'm grateful.
I was digging through my box of memories last night, and I could only find 2. I don't know if you can see. I only found 2. That's Cargo in London.
That's when Rory
2000.
McLeod came on stage. Not that wasn't the Rory. That was at Scala. Oh no. Anyway, I'm calling.
Yeah,
Oh,
Scala.
Cargo.
Scala was the one where Rory McLeod came and presented you and John with the gold disc or whatever it was. Yeah, I was there. I was at that one as well. Yeah, and then I found. Oh, you can't even see them when the camera's not picking up. Yeah, and I found that one as well. Union Chapel.
No way.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
great gig. That was a bit later on. But I was surprised I only found 2 tickets because I've seen you like loads. And one of the things that I always used to enjoy about your gigs, other than your set, which seems like a strange thing to say, was the incredible support artists that you always like. VJ Kishore, Gary Dunn. I saw Newton Faulkner supporting you. Foy Vance, I saw supporting you. Amazingly, all the times I ever saw you, I never saw the little ginger fella once. I didn't even know till years later that he was involved with you. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. It's more of a comment really than a question, but yeah, some incredible artists that you used to have supporting you, and that was always for me one like, oh, who's going to be supporting this time? VJ Kishore especially, man. I still listen to his 13 Rounds album. I still listen to that all the time. I don't even know what he's doing now, if he's still in the biz or what. But yeah, yeah. Who are some of your favourite people to play with and support you?
Yeah, well, those are all good names you've said. When we played in Scotland, there was this band called Amplify, and Donna Machocha was their pianist and singer. She was fantastic.
Yeah,
Great. Yeah, she just solid. She's still well. I'm not. Yeah, she had a bit of a solo career as well after. I mean, Jesus, Rory McLeod opened show for us in Glasgow. Second, Mumford and Son played before us at Glastonbury in the Greenpeace
oh
tent in the
right,
back,
yeah. Wow.
2008. And obviously, my best, like my 2 best mates are John from Nizlopi and then Jimmy Davis.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
he opened more for us more than anybody. He came on a whole tour opening show. Did you ever see him play?
No, I think did he come on with Rory McLeod? Was it both of them at the Scala gig? There was someone with Rory who came on at the same time as him. I can't remember if that
That
was him,
was
but
that was the guy. The other guy who came on at Scala was Danny Thompson. There you go. You know Danny. Yeah.
yeah, of course. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What a legend. That would have been a buzz for John, I would have thought. Yeah.
Well, Danny was the reason he played double bass, really, and
Yeah.
Rory
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I was a
Yeah.
singer-songwriter. Having both of them, it was actually a bit much for my nervous system. I was just like, I just felt kind of embarrassed, like, oh fucking hell, like I should be giving him an award. Sort of
No, no.
embarrassing. I just
Yeah.
didn't know what to do with myself.
Okay, let me ask this question just because I know probably what the answer is going to be, but on behalf of Nizlopi fans all over the world, any chance in the future of more material and or gigs with yourself and John?
Oh yeah, you know what? The last 2 tours I've done, because I'm touring under my own name, Luke Concannon.
Mm,
I've been
yeah,
releasing music under my own name for like, I don't know, like 15 years now. But the last two tours I've done, John's got up with me in like the encore in one of the shows.
Yeah, yeah,
The last night of my 2022 tour, he got up and we did like 5 songs on stage, and then we came down and acoustic. We did about 3 songs, and it's amazing to play with him. You know, he's my oldest friend, and he's a genius,
mm,
and it's just such a, yeah, it's great. And I often, we did write quite a few songs there. Well, there were songs that we wrote before Nizlopi split in 2008 that we never
mm,
released.
mm.
And then there were songs we did a couple tours together like 2013, 14, and we were writing quite a lot then. So there are a few songs around, and I do hope that we can share them. Like I feel called to do what I'm doing, and
Exactly.
it's totally my hope that as well, he and I might
Yeah.
write something. Or actually, we launched. We'll talk about it probably later on, but we launched like an Nizlopi and Luke Concannon Patreon in October,
Thanks for
and
that, because
and
that was I was segueing straight smoothly into that after that. So yeah, awesome. Yeah, good work, mate. Yeah, go on. Yeah, let's talk about the Patreon. Yeah.
and in the launch party, I'm based in America and John's in
Mhm.
England, and I interviewed him a bit about back in the day and what he's doing now, and then he played a little piece. And he just play. I mean, he's just been a masterful musician, right? He puts the hours in, and he has done all his life, right? He's like a good 30 years into very dedicated practice. Anyway, so he plays this incredibly beautiful bowed piece, and then he starts like and everyone's just like, my friend was there watching, and she was just like, I can't believe this is happening, right? Because now he looks like, he's in his little room in Hatton, and he looks like this sort of nondescript middle-aged white man. And then
Mhm.
suddenly it's just, he's like the Roots, but in one man, like that.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, so the Roots, the band, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and so when he was doing that, I just started freestyling over that. So maybe what I need to do is the recording of that. I think the recording of that launch party is on YouTube. I've got a copy anyway, and I should go listen to that piece, write over it, and then we'll be able to put something new out. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So where, if for people who want to connect with your Patreon, is it lukeconcannon.com? Is that the best place to find that?
that's it. Yeah, yeah. And my surname is Concannon, Concannon, all one word, Luke. And
Yeah,
the purpose of that is just, well, one of the main purposes is that people don't pay for music anymore. So it's one way to earn a bit of funds, right, to keep things
yeah,
going. So
yeah.
keep selling music. And the other one is just, we've got Nizlopi, have got loads of unreleased things that we had on like mini discs and stuff.
Mm.
And so we've
Wow.
ripped them.
Yeah, yeah,
And then I've got tons of songs I've written, like particularly over the last like 6 or 7 years. And then just interesting collaborations. Like I did a gig with amazing Irish artist Lisa Canny, and I did one of her songs with her, and she did one of my songs with me. And so it's like, here's one of my songs with like a world-class Irish harpist and harmony vocalists.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I start like a little essay, but every month there's an unreleased Nizlopi song and an unreleased thing of mine. And I just write a little bit about it. Like,
Yeah.
this is like the first version we ever recorded of this song called Love Is, and the story behind it. And
I love that
also on
song.
there, oh, I'm also coaching songwriters on there. So, there's a
Yeah.
interested in getting help with your songwriting. I help songwriters to realize their potential as artists,
Mm.
making a positive difference in the world. And so there's a group of songwriters, like the one group at the moment, there's one guy in Toronto and 3 people in England. We get on a Zoom call each month, and I just help them to go towards their vision and their purpose. And what's amazing is when you do it as a group, there's a lot of energy
Mhm.
because you fire off each other, right? Like you and
Yeah,
me now, if we were on our own, we wouldn't be doing this. But because there's
yeah,
a bit of action, life
yeah,
starts happening. And when there's
yeah.
a group of you working on a purpose together, there's a lot of energy. So it's a good way
Mm.
to grow and realize your vision, man.
So that's for your Patreon as well, the songwriting workshops. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a group songwriting coaching. So we form a group, and it's like 6 months, and we get on a coaching call once a month, and we message each other between. And
Yeah.
I just help people like be happier songwriters making a difference. Yeah.
So what I do, Luke, is if you're listening to this on the radio, then it's lukeconcannon.com. I'll put the link in the description for the podcast as well. So if you're listening on the podcast, they just drop down in the description and you'll see the link to Luke's website and the Patreon and all the rest of it. And if you are listening on the radio show and you can't, you haven't written it down, it's always, as you know, the mixtapepodcast.com, and all the links will be up there as well. Let's go back to early days and when you first popped up on my radar, Luke. And I imagine it's the same for a lot of people. I'm not going to be one of those, I was there right at the very genesis of the band, because I wasn't. But I want to talk to you about the JCB song. What was that like, being propelled from, I imagine playing, around Leamington Spa where you were living, and small gigs to being number one and playing on Top of the Pops. Like what was that like?
Yeah, well, my hero, Rory McLeod, he says it takes 10 to 15 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
And John and I, that was how it was for us. Like we started writing songs when we were 13,
Mhm.
and we were always pretty mad into it. Like, we put on our first gig when we were 13, and we would put in a lot of time writing and practicing and playing and learning. But then particularly like age 22, we were both living like John had studied jazz, and he'd done a jazz diploma in Manchester, and I'd done like a literature degree down in Brighton. And we just both moved home because we thought, like, if we move back in with the parents, we'll be able to record an
Mm.
album, be able to
Yeah.
afford to put like a year into an album and starting to grow what we were doing. And so, by the time the success hit, we sort of knew what we were about. And in a way, we were a little bit old. Like, I think Top of the Pops is like deadly for 21-year-olds. Like, whoa! But we were like 26, 27. And by then, we were freaking thinking about climate change and anti-war stuff. And our songs were like about people power and the migrant crisis and stuff. And so by the time that, and we'd written JCB like in 2001, and then it became successful in 2000 and the end of 2005, right?
Mm.
And so in a way, it was all like, it was just a bit mad. Like, it was as if the world was catching up with what we'd done 4 or 5 years before. So it was
Mm.
amazing, super grateful, really fun, and a little bit disorienting, because it's like artistically we were in one place, and then suddenly we were having to go back to like an early song, and
Mm.
one that the press were like treating us like a novelty act. It was like Crazy
That was
Frog,
going to be my follow-up question. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
basically. It was like
yeah.
that they've set us up really to be like a flash in the pan
Mm.
novelty act, which was sad because music is both John and my calling, and
Mm.
we had a team that were like, like my parents were helping us, my cousin, family,
Mm.
friends, like local kids were coming into our little office and helping
Mm.
us, like, run a record label. And so in a way, we were like serious, like
Yeah,
serious
yeah.
musician, like activists, folkies, jazzers, with really high aspirations and ideals, and
Mm.
like wanting integrity. And then it was like, I remember that cargo gig you were at, Mark.
Mm.
I like read this poem I'd written about the fact
Mm.
that at the time it was like 60,000 children a day were dying of starvation. And
Mm.
and a lot of people were talking about 9/11 and how 3,000 people had died on one day.
Mm.
60,000 children die
Mm.
every day through
Mm.
starvation. And I wrote this poem like ranting about all these things, and someone was just like, shut up and sing about a digger. Do you know what I mean? It was a bit like that. The whole situation was a little bit like that.
Yeah. That couple of things I want to say about that. First of all, about being a novelty act, I was going to follow up with that, because that always annoyed me that you were sort of perceived that way, because there's not just on half these songs about you, but Make It Happen as well. There's so many amazing songs such great songwriting, and yeah, it always like perturbed me that you were seen as that. I think Girls the follow up single to JCB Song. Yeah, great song. Call It Up. Like there's so many amazing songs on that album, and yeah, it always used to annoy me. I want to talk to you about the JCB Song from my perspective, and when it came into my life. I don't want to get too deep and heavy, but I grew up with a stepfather that we didn't gel at all, and it wasn't a very happy household for me. One that I know I was a really introverted kid. I never would go out. I would stay in school holidays. I would just be in my room with my record player and my little snooker table, and just do that. And one day, my mum sort of talked my stepdad into taking me to work with him for the day during the school summer holidays. And he was not a JCB, but he used to drive an excavator. And he took me to work, and he put my BMX in the back of his little Ford Transit, and we were down in this quarry near where we lived in Aveley, and he made me a ramp for my BMX, and I was doing that all day and jumping around, and he let me drive it at the end of the day, like to park it up, and he had these little pork chipolata sausages that I always remember wrapped in foil, when he put them on the radiator to heat them up for his lunch, and do you know what I mean? It's just little things like that. And when JCB Song came out was about a year before he passed away, and like I say, we didn't get on as human beings at all, but I had a lot of like shit memories of growing up. But JCB Song made me focus on that one day. What a great day it was. And as time goes by, I'm finding that that's the memory that's sticking. Like he passed away probably 18 years ago. But when I think of him now, I think of, because of that song, it's the power of music. When I think of him now, that's what I think about. I don't think about all the other shit. So I just wanted to say thank you for writing that song and giving me that, I don't know, perspective, I guess. And yeah, just let me let go of all the other stuff and focus on the positivity, and that's an amazing gift. So thanks very much for that.
Oh, yeah, thanks a lot for saying that. It's
Uh, Sorry, I just got to
that's
have a drink.
yeah, of course. You know, it's really good that you are focusing on the positive.
Mm,
Well, when I think about, how much, boys and men in our culture are um beaten up at school and things, and then like, either like, bigged up too much, like getting too much attention, or and then like put down all at the same time, right? We get very jumbled up. And so when I think about that and how violent like English culture is in different ways, it doesn't, it's not necessarily all like fighting, but just how aggressive the press is, or like our sense of
mm,
humor, right? It's
mm.
like it's like, oh, this is my mate Darren. He's a bit of a twat. Like how we fucking talk about people. And in a
Yeah,
way, it's
yeah.
funny, right? In another
Mm,
way, it's like it's pretty tough. And
mm,
so,
yeah.
in a way, it's a freaking miracle that there are these moments of warmth and compassion and kindness from men, because we've been over toughened, like over
Mm,
toughened up and locked down. So in a way, it's pretty amazing. Like, so, I mean, you said thank you to me for the song, but it just literally emerges out of my situation, right? So
mm,
my granddad, he ran away from home when he was 14 from a violent alcoholic Irish father. And so that was that my great grandfather he was running away from. And that, great granddad was he would have come through the War of Independence in Ireland, the Civil War, where brothers were literally like killing each other because one
mm,
was Fianna Fáil, one was Fine Gael. And, Grandad at 14 ran away from this very violent alcoholic situation, came to England and was, it was the Second World War, and Irish lads would be driven in a van over to Birmingham, and they would be digging people out of the rubble, or to Coventry out of the Blitz. As a teenager, digging out dead bodies. And then,
mm,
so when you just think of the brutality of it and the trauma, and then that when men can still show love after all of that,
mm,
and can nurture little boys and little girls, and then it's really beautiful. It's like the power of the human spirit to survive brutality. And so, that for me, that's what that song is about. It's
Mm.
about, that goodness in my big, strong, tough, like builder, martial artist, rugby playing, hard
Leo
drinking.
Baracus. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about the fact that he could also be really fun and nurturing, and
Mm.
how important that is, that we've got to be able to be both things, because otherwise the world isn't going to get like children
Mm.
need it. Like when you
Yeah.
when your stepdad showed you that kindness and
Mm.
respect and showed you what it's like to be a man, like an adult, that was a big deal.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to say as well, just flipping back to the cargo gig really quickly, I did so episode 4 of my podcast. Originally, the vision I had for this podcast was, and the radio show was not to interview well-known, famous musicians. It was always going to be music-based, but I wanted to talk to people, ordinary, everyday people, but who had remarkable stories about music and what it had done for them and how it had come into their lives and changed them, and so that was sort of the idea. And out of the blue, I got the opportunity to interview Rick McMurray from Ash, and then Rowetta from the Happy Mondays, and then Clint Boone from Inspiral Carpets, and it just was going like that. And I was like, oh, it's doing this now. All right, okay, I'll just go with it. And then out of the blue, this amazing guy called Jesse, and I know he'll be listening and watching. So good day, Jesse. How you going? Jesse's from North Carolina, and he reached out
Hey,
on
Jeff.
Instagram and he said, I really love your podcast. And at the time, I had like, 10 listeners. I was like 3 or 4 episodes in. He said, I really love your podcast. Would you be interested in joining my religion? Right. Now I'm now I'm an atheist, right, Luke? Staunch. And I was like, oh, it's just some nutter off the internet. But then I read the rest of his message, and Jesse and his friend, whose name escapes me embarrassingly for the moment, Kimberly. Um, they are work colleagues, and they founded the first and only religion based solely on rock and roll music. That it's an officially recognised religion in the state of North Carolina, and it's basically a networking group for like new music and bands and stuff like that. So I was like, first of all, yes, 100%, I'm joining your religion, Facebook group. I'll be a member. And second of all, when I was first talking about starting this podcast, you are exactly the sort of person that I wanted to talk to and interview. So episode 4 is with Jesse, the High Gala of Dingzur Zoo, which is the name of his religion. But during that interview, I talked about, it was a really good one. It was a really fun chat. And during that interview, I talked about going to live gigs for me, the closest thing I've experienced to a religious experience was that gig at Cargo. That was a very significant gig for me for a lot of reasons. But I remember vividly at the end when you're doing that two sides of the room, burning, yearning. It's the ground that will be replanted on. That when you're doing that, I remember standing there thinking this is like the closest I've ever felt to what it must be like to be in one of those, evangelical churches or a gospel church where everybody's singing and getting off on the music. And that was the moment where I looked at my friend who I was with at the time and looked at her and thought, no, actually, I love you and I want to marry you. And I did eventually. 20
Woo!
something, 20. It's not an happy ending because 20 something years later, we're divorced now. But in that moment, that was just, yeah, it was one of the, again, like I said, we're talking about the support bands. One of the many, many things I used to love about your gigs was that bit where you used to do that, like, that call and response with the crowd and everybody being into it. Um, yeah, amazing shows, and I really, really, really missed that feeling of like, oneness. Do you know what I mean? Like in a small room of, I don't know how many cargo holds, maybe 1,000 people, everybody singing and dancing, and yeah, amazing memories. So thanks for that as well. There's some of the best gigs I've ever been to. And I've seen the Who, I've seen Pink Floyd. I was at Nebworth for Oasis. Do you know what I mean? But that Cargo gig is really, really up there for me in terms of, you know, how it made me feel. And that's for me what always it's music's like, you know, sometimes people come on here like musicians and they break down especially when we get into the mixtape tracks, they break it down musically, you know, of what the song is and why they like it. And I like, no, I don't want to look behind the curtain. I don't want to know. I don't want to know how the magic trick's done. Don't tell me. Like, I want to just be thrilled by it. I just want it to make me feel that way. I don't want to know why. I don't want to know. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It just, yeah. And that's what I love about music is how it makes me feel. And I've never felt so good at a gig as that gig at Cargo. It was an incredible night for a lot of reasons. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. That's a trip, isn't it? I love the story about you being like, actually, I love you and I want to marry you.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh,
I know
legitimate.
you say it like a sad ending, like, or not a happy ending, but also that's a happy moment, right? When we realize we love someone and we want to commit, and
Yeah.
you know, it's tough to keep things together in this crazy world, but you know, I love that, and I felt that experience at our gigs too. And you know, that's the reason I got into music is that it can be magic.
Mm,
It can be something
mm,
so powerful and elemental, and it can connect you to place. Like often the most powerful gigs were they had some sense of hometown energy. So like whenever we played in Warwickshire where we grew up, that was often a strong show.
mm,
And then when we played in Ireland, like John's
mm,
mum was from Dublin, my dad's family are from the west of Ireland, my mum's granny was from Ireland. So when we played Ireland, we'd often have a strong connection. And then
mm,
we played London and it would be strong because we just played there so much over the years. It was so there's something about being connected to the people, the place. And then if you come from an energy of service, and if you feel like whatever you want to call it, like the universe, God, spirit, whatever coming through, then something big can happen. And I think what's interesting is the heart element in it and the emotional, the whole person, which is what art can be so good at unlocking, right? It's not just about the intellect. In fact, it's
mm,
not so much about the intellect, it's about the whole the heart, actually, the center of a person, the
mm,
wholeness of a person,
mm,
and the wholeness of a community. And that's what I loved was getting everyone singing together.
mm,
And I think that that is the goal of one of the big goals of music for me is how can we create something together?
mm.
You know, how can we be brave? And you know, the other thing I used to love at those gigs, and I still do it now when I gig, is I'll invite people up. Like, does
Mm.
anyone want to come up and
Yeah, I
jam?
remember that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I never had the balls to do it, but I always wanted to. Yeah.
And what would be mad, right? It would depend on the spirit of the night. If the spirit was really strong, like if there was a great vibe and everything was flowing, someone would get up and they would burn the place down. Like we'd
Mm,
get there was this like rapper, but he was like a South Asian rapper who got up with us at Scala, and he was just like, "Does anyone want to come up and jam with us?" I was like, "Woo!" And you just don't know, right? Someone
yeah,
could get
yeah,
up on stage and do the most
yeah,
offensive you ever heard,
yeah.
but because often when the night was really vibing, someone would get up and then they would just surf on that energy, but with this sort of fresh energy they had because they hadn't been
Mm,
touring for 2 months or
yeah,
whatever. They weren't exhausted. They had a bit of like, and also it's a
yeah,
new thing, and the
yeah,
energy would just like go up
yeah.
loads more. But then equally, if it was a tough night and it was hard to get things off the ground, like we had a when we sold out Shepherd's Bush Empire just after JCB, the sound was terrible. We were exhausted. We couldn't get things going. It's like a fire when you keep trying to light
Mm.
it and it won't. And then we said, "Does anyone want to get up with us?" And these two young women got up from the crowd and they were just like, "Ah, no, you say something. No, no."
Oh no.
It was
Yeah,
flat.
yeah,
It was they were just like, "No." It was just like a really bad karaoke moment, you know. So
yeah,
it
yeah,
was,
yeah.
but taking risks is what allows magic to happen.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Okay, let's drop into your mixtape tracks, Luke, because I'm aware I'm taking up a fair bit of your time, mate. Mixtape tracks. So, as you know, Luke, the show's called the Mixtape, and I asked you to come on and make up an imaginary mixtape of tracks and 6 tracks to pick. Track one is I always like to kick off a tape or a playlist that I make, an attention grabber. In this case, not necessarily a banger or an upbeat impact song, but it certainly grabbed attention. And you went with Poor Boy's Shoes, Declan O'Rourke. Talk us through that one, mate.
Talking to people who open show for us. I didn't talk about
Saw that you
like
interviewed him as well not long ago. That must have been a buzz.
yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is, we were getting a lot of traction back. This was like 2000, and I suppose he came on tour with us 2006 or something. And so Sony said to us, like, we've got this amazing Irish songwriter we think will go really well with you. We were like fiercely independent. I was a bit like, bloody
Mm.
Sony, why do I have to say yes to
Yeah.
them? But,
Yeah.
but we would chill. Well, like they said they would help promote the tour. And we listened to Declan and we were like, yeah, he's good. And then he
Mm.
came on tour and I was like, wow, he's really good. But then, I didn't like it was great being on tour with him and getting a bit closer. But then I heard him again like 10 years later, and he put out this album called Chronicles of the Great Irish Famine.
Mm.
So he spent like 15 years studying the text from the poorhouses, the real
Mm.
stories. And this particular song, and he wrote like a song based on what he was studying, what he was learning. This particular one, a book called the Workhouses of Ireland,
Mm.
the Fate of Ireland's Poor. There's a story of in the midst of the Great Irish Famine, like 1847, the man who walked mile after weary mile with his wife who was dying. They both knew they were dying of starvation and then of the sicknesses that happen when people get that malnourished. But he carried her, she couldn't stand, all the way from the workhouse back to their house that they'd lived in and that they built and they'd had their 2 children in. Their children died in the famine too, in the workhouse. And he carries her the 7 miles and lays her on the bed. And they found them the next day, and he'd taken her feet and put them on his chest as if to warm them with the last heat in his body. Because, they were both this close to death, but he was still looking after it, even when he was dying. That he was giving her the very last thing that he had.
Mm.
And Declan being a good human being, he put a lot into honoring that story. And so, yeah, this song kills me. And for me, it gets 10 out of 10 on all the important things. Like the musicality is just beautiful. The composition, the way that it tells the story with this sort of full of life at the beginning, and then it slows. And there's this moment where everything gets cut, like continuity gets cut, the children die, everything's gone. And then at the end, it's almost like the spirit of the people carries on, and that their memory carries on, even though even though their bodies didn't carry on, and it's all there in the music. So yeah, the songwriting, everything.
It's an amazing track, and like you say, tragic story, and but so well written and beautifully phrased. And yeah, I'd not heard this song before you picked it, and yeah, absolutely blew me away. Like the track one attention grabber can sometimes be like won't get fooled again, or something like that, which is an attention grabber in a different way. But that grabbed me like in I hate the phrase in the feels, but it really did, like, emotionally pull me in. Beautifully told story, and yeah, it's one of them where you can see it as you're hearing, you can picture it, and yeah, amazing choice. And what I do, Luke, is obviously on the radio show, in between us talking, I drop the songs in. On the podcast, I can't, because the song's obviously licensed content. So what I do is I make up a separate Spotify playlist and I link that in the description. And then if people want to drop out of the chat and listen to the song as we go, then they can just drop in and do that. So there'll be a link in the description if you're listening on the podcast to Luke's mixtape playlist.
The whole
Yeah.
of that album, Chronicles of the Great Irish Famine. I mean, particularly like the first 7 or 8 songs are just masterpieces,
Mm.
and then and the whole of it has got a lot of you know, some of the later songs are like 8 out of 10 songs to me, but there's still a lot of interest in them. Like
Yeah.
there's one song towards the end of the album where it's a story of like how the emigrants ended up in places like Toronto, but
Mm,
they were so riddled with disease from their weakened state that these cities would be on high alert because the Irish were bringing disease into
mm,
Toronto because they were
mm,
so depleted by famine, which was, in large part the because of the extraction of wealth that the British Empire did, right? Colonialism was largely about extracting wealth and bringing it back to the richest people. And anyway, so yeah,
yeah.
whole album's great, and his latest album is Arrivals is also great. Anyway,
Okay.
onwards,
Cool.
brother. I know you got
Yeah.
to.
Track two is a song that you sing loud and proud when you're on your own in the car or the shower. And as soon as I saw what you'd picked, I could picture, not that I pictured you in the shower, but I could hear you singing this song very clearly in my mind's eye. And you chose the classic Love Man, Otis Redding. Why did you pick that one, mate?
Mate, you know what? I've never fucking. I always sing it like it's one of those songs that
Yeah.
just goes around
Oh,
my head.
go on,
But
give us a blast. Yeah.
love, man, that's all I am now. I've got to get this guy. I'm just a love man. Ooh, baby, call me the love man. Yes, I am just a love man. 6 feet one way, 210. A long leg and 30 past them. A long legged and I'm out of sight. My mind, baby, I wanna take you on, 'cause I'm a love man. Ooh, baby, I'm a love man. What a guy, man. What an absolute legend. And
That's the
you know
promo clip for the podcast. Thanks very much. That was awesome.
my parents were sort of still are, I guess, mods, right? My Uncle Terry would be in knife fights as the leader of a mod gang, and my dad was, they one night they walked into like the only place you could get like a drink late around Warwick, Leamington was there was this kind of like biker bar out on one of the motorways,
Mhm.
and they walked in one night, and my auntie Mars, they're clearly mods, right? They're in a biker bar. They're in with the rockers. My auntie Mars walks in the door. She's a red-headed Irish woman. She just goes, "Would you look at the state of this lot?" and my dad, Kieran and Terry were like, Mars, you're not going to be the one that has to fight these 30 bikers. Do you know what I mean? Like, shut up. Anyway, so yeah, they would have been Northern Soul Nights.
Mm,
My dad would only dance to James Brown, right? That was his jam.
fair enough.
Um,
Yeah.
they were all in Scar and Soul reviews.
Mm,
My dad and his brothers and sisters, and so I grew up with the music. And when I was a kid, my dad was in a great soul review and playing trumpet and flugelhorn. They'll kill me, not trumpet. And so, I just heard the music all the time. And in a way, there's just very little. I mean, there's nothing that compares to the genius of black music, right?
mm,
Like, I feel like we're all just like footnotes, to, to that genius, right? Like the Beatles were super inspired by R&B and
mm,
rock and roll, and Bo Diddley and the whole thing.
mm.
So yeah, so that's and Otis for me is the guy, right? He's just such a warm-hearted guy, and it's playful and it's intense.
What I've done recently, Luke, is I've got 6 Spotify playlists now. All the track ones that people have picked, all the track twos, all the track threes, all the track fours, etc. And the amount of soul classics that are in track two, Aretha Franklin, Ella Fitzgerald, Otis Redding, Marvin Gaye, like they're really well represented in that, in that songs that you sing, in the shower. Yeah, if you're interested in those playlists, then it's the mixtapepodcast.com if you're listening, and you can get all the tracks there. Let's move on. Track three, Luke, is your favourite cover version, and you picked the amazing version of the Bob Dylan track "God on Our Side" by the Neville Brothers. Talk to us about that one, mate.
Yeah, it was a song again that I heard in my kind of childhood. That album, Yellow Moon by the Neville Brothers. I love albums where mid-career, you know, when people are in their 40s or their 50s and they kind of hit a new stride, right? Paul Simon with Graceland
Mm.
and the Neville Brothers, I mean, they'd been releasing music since the 50s, I believe. And then in the 80s, they released this seminal record, right? Yellow Moon. And that was one of the covers on it. And so Aaron Neville, just, yeah, just the poet and a priest, like very soulful energy. And, you know, when you get that kind of Jewish poet depth of Bob Dylan or Leonard Cohen, and then you get someone who can actually sing, unlike Bob Dylan and Leonard
When I watched
Cohen.
the video, that was the first comment on the YouTube video was, yeah, Bob Dylan like can't sing for shit, but what a songwriter.
Yeah, there you go. And it's what's a trip with Bob is like he's not like Len is like a published poet, and you hear that in. I mean, if you put Dylan's and Cohen's lyrics side by side, you can see that Leonard's a highly educated, published poet who's written a lot of just words, right?
Mm,
But there's still something about Bob's got the feel for simplicity.
mm,
And there's a directness to that. Woody Guthrie, his hero, said, any fool can write a complicated song, but it takes genius to write a simple song.
mm.
And Bob had a feel for the power of folk song, where it's like each verse is about a war, right? And then it ends on God on our side, but then it slowly evolves. And there's something very prophetic and ancient about it. So
I think Dylan is probably the most represented artist on the mixtape over the last year or so, and particularly in the cover version section. Not to do him a disservice, but there's been so many. He's written so many amazing songs. So many amazing versions of them. A few weeks ago, I had John Steele, the drummer from the Animals, on, and obviously we were talking about House of the Rising Sun. And he said, when a story starts with "I was on a pub crawl through Greenwich Village with Bob Dylan," like you get your attention there. You're like, yeah, this is going to be a good story. This, and he said basically that Dylan told them that he heard their obviously electric version of House of the Rising Sun, and that's what made him plug in and ditch the acoustic. Was he heard their version of and he thought this is the way I want to go, and he'd written, you know, like a Rolling Stone, and you know he'd done that, you know, the whole ditching the acoustic, plugging in thing. Yeah, fantastic artist, obviously Dylan, and yeah, like I say, probably the most makes the most appearances on the mixtape throughout all the choices, and particularly on track 3 as well. Track 4, Luke, is a song you wish you could play to your 18-year-old self. You picked Jim Moray's "Sounds of Earth." Talk us through that one, mate.
yeah, so Jim Murray actually he was Terry O'Brien was Gary Dunn's manager back in the day.
Mm,
And the other artist she represented was Jim Murray and didn't get him back then. My
mm.
family, identifying fiercely as Irish, was resistant to English folk. They thought it was all a bit bloody wafty. And so I was all a bit like, oh, this is so boring. What are they on about? I was saying that like there's many exceptions, right? Richard Thompson being one of the most
Yeah,
noticeable.
sure. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So we didn't quite get Jim back then, but then I heard this song a few years ago, and I think the reason I picked it is just that it's when people kind of blow the doors off with a genre and they say, well, you don't have to, you know, write something within this very narrow field that pop music's in, right? Where it rhymes super hard and it's hooky and it's like up tempo. It's like we end up in this really small box where we're trying to make something that's going to be successful. Whereas Jim here takes the story of the space time capsule called Sounds of Earth, which was a project where there were some astronomers that realized that there was going to be an alignment of the planets that would allow us to slingshot a capsule out into deep space, and that you could put a gold disc in it with a record player because of the nature of space, it wouldn't degrade. And so it's like this represents Earth, right? And it'll represent it, please God, for like millennia and millennia, and maybe in, I don't know, 2 million years. Some
Mm.
other intelligent will listen to it and be like, oh, that's interesting. and get
yeah,
a sense of,
yeah,
there's a map to where Earth is. And there was different things on there. But yeah, it's you got to hear the song to hear the story. But basically, two of the scientists working on it fell in love. And just before the capsule was sent, I think one of the scientists recorded her heartbeat, the sound of someone falling in love. And
wow,
the combination of like the historical story, the cosmic kind of quest in that story, and then the very personal thing of kind of love mixed in with science and intellect. And it was just beautiful. And so I just love that Jim had the ingenuity to come up with something
mm,
like that. My teenage self had heard it. It was like, oh God, look, you can do that. You don't just have to
yeah,
like Beatles
yeah,
stuff. You like,
yeah, yeah. That's what that track is. I think all about for me is like sometimes musicians look at that track and they think about like you just did then like what the possibilities are, in terms of music and others like another side of the coin is like life advice for your 18-year-old self. So like as an example, Clint Boone picked Letter to Myself by the Lottery Winners, which is an amazing song. If you're not familiar, it's incredible. But then there's an Australian artist called Steve Kilbey who was in a band called The Church, and when he was growing up and when he was 18 in the 70s, it was all very much, boom, baby, baby, I love you, woo, woo, woo.
yeah,
He picked Sigur Rós, which was blew my mind because that would just, he said like that would just open me up to, what was possible with using the same instruments, but the different, structure doesn't have to be a thing. 4/4 time doesn't have to be a thing. Do you know what I mean? He just, yeah. So I like that question because there's different ways of looking at it, and everybody looks at it like either one of those two ways. Yeah, and it's a great way for me to like as we get to track 5 now. Sorry, track 6. Sorry, that I literally put that question in so that I could get introduced to new stuff that I'd not heard because obviously I've been into music for a long time and I know a lot of music. So the reason I picked the obscure track was so that I could get introduced to new stuff that I'd not heard before. But
wait, we've not done track five. We've not done track five yet.
I know that's what I was just going to say. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. This is the fun one. This is the one that I like talking about the most, and this gives insight. This one into people for sure. Track 5, Luke, is a song you would put on your mixtape to let the listener know you are romantically interested, and you went with the Smooth as Silk, "Call My Name" by Prince. Has that ever worked for you? Have you ever put that on a mixtape, or has someone put one on for you? Why did you pick that track, mate?
I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know what it's like for younger folk now, but all through my courtship years, mixtapes were a thing. I
Mm.
got together with my wife coming up on 12 years ago, and definitely there were enough CD CD playlists that I
Mm.
made for her. Um, Prince generally goes on pretty much everything for me the last 20 years of my life. I used to end up DJing in a local bar on Christmas Eve in Leamington, and it would just basically just be Prince tune after Prince tune because it's like it fills all the boxes of like you can dance to it,
Yeah,
it's really
yeah,
fun, it's
yeah.
kind of like makes you think. It's sort of sexy often. But this one, as people have been discovering so much of his music since his
Mm.
vaults were unlocked, it's one of those ones that I don't think it even appeared on any album, but it's an absolute tune, like a monster tune. And it
Mm.
just shows his genius as an arranger as well. And yeah, like for me, the chorus, like, I just can't stop writing songs about you. I love you so much. Those like call and response things. And
Yeah,
just
yeah.
that whole Stephanie, when I go away and write, she's like, my wife, she's like, did you write something that wasn't about me? She's like challenging me to just not just be on the muse,
Mm.
but other
Mm.
things. But I think there's something beautiful about that. Like that in a way, we just want to write about love a lot of the time.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the biggest, yeah, motivators for songwriting for sure. Have you managed to catch I can't remember what it's called now, the We Are the World documentary on Netflix? Have you seen that yet?
No.
Oh man, it's so good. So, I meant to drop it in when we were talking about Dylan, but Dylan obviously is involved in that. And every single camera shot of him, as you can imagine, he's just like miserable as you like. He's like, I don't want to be here. What am I doing here? Like, yeah, he looks and he must have felt so out of place there. But Prince, it was they recorded it the night of the American Music Awards because everyone was in town in LA, so that was logistically the only time it would work. And Prince like swept the board at those awards, and he was round the corner like at some bar, and they were trying to get him to like come to the studio and sing on "We Are the World," and he's like, "Nah, I'll come and play. I'll come and put a guitar solo on it." And they were like, "Well, no, it's not really a guitar solo sort of arrangement. Like we got piano and strings and whatnot." But and he was like, "No, I'm all right then." And he's just like, "No, I'm not interested." But yeah, it's a really good documentary. I would heartily recommend that anyone who hasn't seen it. I can't remember what it's called now. I had a conversation with my mate about it yesterday, and I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, it talks about and obviously Michael Jackson and when you look at the artists, they've got like Tom Petty, Michael Jackson, Bob Dylan, Lionel Richie, Cyndi Lauper. There's so many like icons on that recording. Yeah, it's a great one. But Bob Dylan is just like face like thunder the entire night. Like he's not even remotely interested. And like they're all like vocalists, right? They're all like proper singers. Do you know what I mean? Whereas Dylan is, I'm sure even he would admit, he's not like you know, like you said earlier, he's about the songwriting and the feeling, not the technical brilliance. And yeah. So I can imagine he would have felt really out of place there. But I imagine what "We Are the World" would have sounded like with a Prince guitar solo in it. And I think, oh, I want to hear that song. I really want to hear that song. So yeah, gutted. But yeah, never mind. Never mind. Turn a different corner. Okay, and finally, Luke. By the way, this is the longest podcast episode I've ever done. This might be a two-parter because it's normally I think about people's attention span. Do you know what I mean? And it's normally 20 minutes, half hour. And we've been going an hour already, and we're still not done. Okay, right. Sorry, mate. I'm holding you up. I know. Track 6, Luke. Track 6 is pick something a little bit left field, obscure, a B-side, or an album track. Rory McLeod, Huge Sky. I know you got lots to say about Rory, so go for it, mate. Give him a good plug and a good talking up.
Yeah, so Rory McLeod is my hero, my like come to God artist. I saw him. Oh, I remember Dad went to Cambridge Folk Festival in the 80s, and he was like, "Oh, there's this guy," and he puts like a wooden board on the ground, and he's got tap shoes, and he's like playing the tap shoes with his feet. There's a mic next to it, and he's like playing the bass drum with his heel, and there's like a snare on the tap, the toes, and then he plays harmonica and sings in between. So it's like he's going like like singing like no, and like singing words
Yeah.
and to me he was just he is just a magician, right? He has that thing, that Bobby McFerrin thing, where you're like, how is he even doing all of that?
Yeah.
Then he's a great songwriter. And then also there's just a real sense of just deep integrity to him. It's all about service. It's not about fame. He writes for working people. He writes for rebellious women, refugees, and it's just beautiful stuff. So I just totally fell in love with his music as a teen, and then that was the reason I sound like a total mockney on that first album and on the JCB song, because I never stopped listening to Rory McLeod all through my teans. So I
Yeah.
thought, when you sing, it's got to be like, well, I'm rumbling in this JCB.
Brilliant.
He's my hero. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah. So and this song, Rory was one of the Gastarbeiters, the foreign workers, like in Auf Wiedersehen Pet, when Germany was building a lot in the 70s. He worked there, and the foreigners tend to be given all the shit jobs, like happens in every country.
Mm.
And there was a Kurdish guy who was in Germany as an asylum seeker, and they forced him to go back to be tortured and imprisoned in, God, was it? I wonder which country it was. I can't remember. Was it Iran? Anyway, in the press conference, he ran and he jumped out the window rather than be sent back to his death. And so Rory wrote this song. You saw the huge sky with the birds all singing around, looking free. You're much bigger than you were ever given room to be. You're much bigger than you were ever given room to be. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's an amazing track, and yeah, I listened to it yesterday, and like when I listen to the mixtape tracks that people pick that I haven't heard before, normally once, twice I go through and make a couple of notes, but I had that one going, yeah, a few times and a few different versions, live version, and yeah, it's an incredible track, like you say, powerful and emotive, and yeah. On that note, Luke, let's just quickly, very quickly, chat about your latest album, your solo album. That's out at the moment, lukeconcannon.com. You can get that. Yeah, and I'm very happy to announce that that arrived unscathed to Australia in the post, the vinyl version of that. Future plans, Luke, what have you got going on? Are you going to be writing more, recording more solo stuff? What have you got going on in the future, mate?
Well, I'm actually at a friend's little cabin in New Hampshire. I can't show you all the snow that's on the ground out here,
Wow.
but I'm here all week, and it's the first time I've had like a week to go and write songs on my own in about 7 years, because that's what life can be like. But I'm making the time now, and the next sort of I'm going to get about 4 weeks of writing in this spring, and I've got a load of songs that I've been writing over recent years, and so there's a few songs that are almost ready to put out, and then I'll be getting others ready. So I'll be putting songs out over the next year, and then doing a proper tour of the British Isles and New England in next spring.
Yeah.
I'm doing a few, like just a few gigs, like the 30th of this will all be up on my website but soon, but the 30th of May I'm doing a London gig. The 1st of June I'm playing my hometown Leamington Spa. The 2nd of June playing Shrewsbury. Yeah. But the main project this year, bro, is we're building our own home. So I'm
I
living
saw
in a
that.
year in southern
Yeah,
Vermont, and
yeah, it
just
looks amazing.
step by step building our own home, you know. So I think I've truly betrayed the pop star model, because I'm living basically in a big tent, and I'm learning about, how to pour concrete and how to mill up firewood.
Yeah. Luke Concannon, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your energy, and your music over the years has inspired me and comforted me, and yeah, made me feel all sorts of emotions. So thanks so much for coming on, Luke. I really, really appreciate your time, mate. Cheers, buddy.
I really appreciate you. Say hi to the kids and sorry that you're late.
I guarantee there's a Nutella bomb gone off in the kitchen when I go out there. That was a Mixtape podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to jump up to the top of the page and smash that follow button, and you'll be notified every time there's a new episode, or follow me on Instagram at the Mixtape Perf. Till the next time.